So guys, it's been a bit, but I'm now officially back for the meantime, and in this video I'll be starting a three-part series discussing Insomniac's three Spider-Man games so far. But let's begin with talking about the first installment, simply titled Marvel's Spider-Man. This is a 2018 action-adventure game which, as briefly mentioned, was developed by Insomniac and published by Sony. As you can tell, this is based on the Marvel hero and creates its own universe from being inspired by mostly his comic book universe. This is a third-person game, with you mainly playing as the main hero. You can freely move around an open-world New York City, specifically in Manhattan, where you can interact with characters, do side missions, and unlock new things, such as gadgets and suits, by playing the main story, or as the mentioned, side missions. If you don't want to zip-zap around the city, which I don't see why you wouldn't, you can also use a fast travel system which uses the city subway. While fighting as the hero and building up consecutive attacks, you can also build up folks which can be used to heal yourself or use special finishing attacks to take down an enemy. The as mentioned gadgets include electric weapon, concussive blasts, and impact weapon. The suits are overall based on original designs, based on the comics, or based on other media, specifically more movies. Specifically going into the numbers, there are 9 original designs, 28 that are based on comics, and 10 that are based on other media. To go even more specific, the comic suits are from the following runs: the 80s Amazing Spider-Man, the 90s Amazing Spider-Man, the 2000s Amazing Spider-Man, the 2010s Amazing Spider-Man, FF aka Fantastic Four, Edge of Spider-Verse, the 90s Spider-Man, Civil War, Marvel's Mangaverse, Web of the Spider-Man, Spider Island, Spider-Man / Deadpool, Spider-Man 2099, Fear Itself, Amazing Fantasy, Secret War, and Spider-Man Noir. The other media suits are from the Raimi trilogy, The Amazing Spider-Man, Captain America Civil War, Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Avengers Infinity War, Spider-Man Far From Home, and Spider-Man No Way Home. Many suits can offer special abilities such as aiding in combat, increasing focus, reducing gravity, enhancing stealth, being invulnerable, and to disabled enemy weapons. These powers aren't only accessible to the specific suit, but you can also use them with any once you've unlocked it. While playing the game, you can also level up, where you can unlock different skills from different specialities, which are ground combat, aerial combat, and traversal. While you specifically unlock stuff such as suits, suit mods, gadgets, and upgrades, you can do it with resources called tokens, which are awarded for such tasks. You get challenge tokens for completing Taskmaster missions, doing stealth, or traversal missions. You can get backpack tokens for, well, finding the character's old backpacks, which also show you some items from his past. You get research tokens for completing research sections, science minigames, or collecting pigeons for Howard. You get crime tokens for stopping crimes. You get base tokens for clearing out enemy ones, and you get landmark tokens for taking pictures of places around the map. To find specific things to do in the map, you have to go to different radio towers and areas and unscramble a jam in the system. There are sections of the game where you play as Peter without a costume, Mary Jane Watson, and Miles Morales. Peter's sections are mostly problem solving, while MJ and Miles' section are mainly stealth missions, where they have to avoid threats. For difficult options, there were originally 3 in the game, which was Friendly being easy, Amazing being normal, and Spectacular being hard. An update would then add one called Ultimate, which increases enemy damage and health while decreasing your own. They also added New Game Plus, which allows you to start a game with using all suits, powers, gadgets, and suit mods which you've previously unlocked in a previous playthrough. There are also accessibility options which allow players to skip puzzles, enable larger subtitles, automatically complete QuickTime events, and replace button tapping with button holding. There is also a photo mode which allows you to take pictures of your character using a variety of filters, frames, and stickers. The camera can be used to take selfies, or you can freely move the camera around the character. We have Peter, who is voiced by Uriel Lowenthal, and is a 23-year-old research assistant. He gained his superhuman abilities at the age of 15 with being bitten by a genetically modified spider like most other universe versions of him. Now being Spider-Man for 8 years, he's become more experienced as a crime fighter, but still struggles to balance his superhero and personal lives. He mostly has help in both lives from the Daily Bugle reporter Mary Jane Watson, who was voiced by Laura Bailey, who is now also his ex-girlfriend. He also has help in his superhero life by NYPD Captain Yuri Wantby, who is voiced by Tara Platt. For his personal life, he's supported by his Aunt May, who's voiced by Nancy Linra, and who volunteers at a homeless shelter named Feast, which is run by Martin Lee, who is voiced by Stephen O. Young. He also works for a respected scientist named Dr. Octo Octavius, who is voiced by William Sayles, while Norman Osborn, voiced by Mark Rolston, wants to hire them. During the story, he meets other characters such as Miles, voiced by Najee Jetta, his parents, who are NYPD Officer Jefferson Davis, who is voiced by Russell Richardson, and Rio Morales, voiced by Jacqueline Pinal. Someone who he also meets is Silva Sabanona, who is voiced by Nicole Elsie, who is the lead of a private military named Sable International. Villains he faces are longtime kingpin of crime Wilson Fisk, voiced by Travis William, who he locks up at the start, where a supernaturally powered gang named the Inner Demons begin to rise for a new villain named Mr. Negative, who can corrupt people with his own touch. Other villains he must face are Electro, voiced by Josh Keaton, Rhino, voiced by Fred Tatascar, Scorpion, voiced by Jason Spisak, Vulture, voiced by Dwight Schultz, Shocker, voiced by Dave B. Mitchell, Taskmaster, voiced by Brian Bloom, Screwball, voiced by Stephanie Lemillin, and Tombstone, voiced by Corey Jones. Then we have Dr. Octopus's origin story, where he then leads Rhino, Mr. Negative, Scorpion, Vulture, and Shocker in his own version of the Sinister Six. There are other characters that are seen off-screen or are only in one scene. The second case is Harry Osborn, who is Peter and MJ's childhood friend, being voiced by Scott Porter, who is seen to be on vacation in Europe and leaving Peter to do some tasks, but is actually in the tank being treated for a disease his mother also died of. J. Jonah Jameson now has a side podcast with being voiced by Darren Dean Paul, and even co-creator of the character Stan Lee himself appears in a cameo as a cook. For the DLC, we have Black Cat, voiced by Erica Lindbeck, the dad, Walter Hardy's voice being portrayed by Daniel Roldan, and Hammerhead, voiced by Keith Silverstein. The game also has fictional places or entities from Marvel Comics too, which include the Avengers Tower, the Wakandan Embassy, the Samirakan Embassy, the Sanctum Sanctorum, the law offices of Nelson and Murdoch, Elias Investigations, Rand Enterprises, the company Damage Control, and Empire State University. Here, since there are many plot lines in the story, I'm going to tell it all, but at the same time in a kind of more quicker manner. So let's try and do this in 3, 2, 1. Spider-Man catches Wilson Fisk. The Inner Demons begin to seize his assets. MJ and Spider learn that they want something called the Devil's Breath. Thanks to Officer Davis, the hero stops an attack from the group. The officer is applauded as a hero and is going to be medaled at a re-election for Mayor Osborn, though the demons attack, killing the officer and many other attendees. Peter, before being knocked out, finds out that Martin Lee transforms into the group's leader named Mr. Negative. After the attack, Osborn hires Silver and her group to supplant the police. Peter, in his regular life, befriends Davis' son named Miles and persuades him to join working at Feast. While this, Peter works for his boss, Octavius, where they research into advanced prosthetic limbs, but Osborn withdraws their funding in an attempt to make them work for his mega corporation, Oscorp. Peter still works for him, but in the meantime he searches for Lee, where he discovers Devil is a lethal bioweapon which was created by Oscorp while trying to develop a cure for genetic diseases. Lee locates and manages to steal the only sample of the weapon and threatens to release it unless Osborn surrenders to him. Thankfully though, Spider-Man and MJ stop him from doing this. He's incarcerated at a maximum security prison named the Raft, where the weapon is also secured. Though while this happens, Octavia obsesses over creating the enhanced limbs, where he creates 4 mechanical tentacles operated from his back and mentally controlled by a neural interface. He then reveals to Peter that he is suffering from a disease that will immobilize him, and these limbs will allow him to continue work further when his body fails him, though Peter warns him that the interface could impact his mind and personality. But after this, in secret, he continues to work on it as he more and more gets angry at Osborn. A breakout then happens at the Raft, where Spider-Man learns that Negative, Electro, Vulture, Rhino and Scorpion have escaped. They ultimately trap and beat Spider-Man to a pulp, where they reveal their new boss, who is Octavius, now under the name Dr. Octopus, who warns him not to interfere before they retake the bioweapon and release it in Times Square, which causes a mass outbreak which infects numerous people, including May. With this attack, the city is in chaos, where Osborn declares a material war and blames the hero, making him a fugitive. After waking up but hurt, our hero gradually defeats Electro, Vulture, Rhino and Scorpion. MJ then infiltrates Osborn's penthouse, where she learns that Oscorp developed the weapon to cure Harry's illness. Lee as a child was also a test subject for this cure, where he gained his abilities in an explosion, which also killed his parents and caused his hatred for Norman. There's an antidote for the weapon, but he has stolen it. Spider-Man tracks him down and defeats him, but Doc Ock arrives, once again beats him, and escapes with both the antidote and Norman. As our hero recovers, Miles is bitten by a genetically modified spider, which unknowingly was on MJ from the penthouse. With inspiration from MJ, Spider-Man now builds himself an armored suit and confronts the villain on Oscorp Tower, where he rescues Norman. The Doc reveals that he knew Peter was Spider-Man and they carry on fighting. Our hero defeats the villain while retrieving the antidote. Ultimately, Octavius is locked up, but Peter now must decide whether to either use the limited cure to save May, or let her die, while they create a vaccine for everyone. Ultimately, he decides to make sure everyone as possible can live with May telling him that she knew he was Spider-Man and that she was proud of the man he has become before she passes. 3 months later, New York is back to normal. Peter and MJ rekindle a relationship. Miles tells Peter he has gained powers, where Peter tells him he is Spider-Man. Osborn resigns as mayor, and we find him entering a secret laboratory where Harry is kept in a tank with a black web-like substance. This game first came about after Sony Interactive Entertainment's Vice President of Product Development, Connie Booth, visited Insomniac to speak with their CEO, Ted Price. The company at the time recently released their Xbox One exclusive named Sunset Overdrive. In the conversation the two were both having, Booth mentioned that the company should work on a Marvel Comics game, with Price having a fairly neutral response, since they at the time only developed original properties, but his developers were enthusiastic about doing such a subject. What Marvel games were specifically doing at the time were releasing software based on or tied into film IPs from the company, which to the senior vice president Jay Ong's opinion, this didn't give them enough time to create anything quote-unquote impressive. Publisher Activision had been the company to make Spider-Man games since 2000, but Ong would go on to reveal that this was no longer the case, and that in the future of the characters' games, it would be in the hands of both Sony and Insomniac. Overall, Marvel did not want their next game to be based on any existing film or comic book storyline, and wanted Insomniac to choose what character they wanted to tell an original story with. Ultimately, they chose Spider-Man, saying that they related to the character's dynamic between being the masked vigilante and everyman Peter Parker. Creative director of the company, Brian Intihar, said that he felt that he was the most relatable of superheroes. He loved Tony Stark, but he couldn't identify with a billionaire. He loved Thor, but he couldn't identify with someone that was a god. But with Peter, he makes mistakes, he has his up and downs, which very much can relate to. Price said that the character is so human while being the most popular Marvel character. He also felt that the traversal system they created for Sunset Overdrive would be built upon for such a character. The game would then become the first licensed property to be developed by the company in its 22 years of existence. While they were very much excited, the team members would then start to feel daunted, realizing how much of a popular character with massive exciting stories they have chosen. Our director, Hakeem Chu, however, still saw this as a great opportunity they had with such a character in history, and consulted online references along with Marvel staff who had a great amount of extensive knowledge on the character. Going back to the engine, the company used a proprietary one, which was previously used in Sunset Overdrive and modified in support of 4K and HDR for Ratchet and Clank. The game would then be announced publicly in June 2016 at Sony Electronic Entertainment Expo press conference, after it had been in 4 years of development, with it then being finalised 2 years later in July 2018, when it was released to manufacturing. Overall, Intel worked with the writing team, who were led by John Perquer, who was creating an original version of the character that still remained true to the original. Overall, Perquer wrote the story with Ben Affleck and Kelsey Bertram. Christos Cage would then co-write the script, with Dan Slott providing additional story contributions. The overall company researched many iterations of the character to understand the elements to create a compelling Spider-Man story. However, Perquer wanted to avoid drawing too much influence from any specific version of the character. They learned through this that whenever the hero wins in the story, Peter always ends up losing. But when Peter actually gets a rare win, Spider-Man somehow ends up losing as well. This is where Intel wanted to make sure that the game had a story that was very much Peter Parker's than Spider-Man's. The team also avoided telling the classic origin story too, since it was very much common knowledge. Yuri worked with voice director Chris Zimmerman on this project. Overall, he wanted to differentiate his voices between both sides of the character, As Peter, he wanted to be gentle, while with Spider-Man he wanted to be more confident. But again, he didn't want the two to sound completely different and spent a good time practicing both voices to create such a balance. It was Bioware that persuaded the studio to cast Yuri because he trusted his acting ability. Multiple recordings would then be done for the open world dialogue, where Spider-Man could feel rested while walking, standing or crouching on a building, or would feel more rushed or tired while swinging or being in the middle of a fight. The recording can also be switched mid-conversation, as he's middle from taking a walk to then going to hit an enemy. For the character's relationship with Octavius, the writers considered ways to make their work relationship more interesting. This is where they thought of having Pete work for Otto, and then partly be responsible for creating one of his biggest enemies. Bioware aimed to make Octavius a tragic figure, optimistic and a mentor to Peter instead of making him the usual power-hungry character he is. They also wanted to detail their friendship too to make it more saddening when the mentor would turn into the villain. Intel felt that both characters had many parallels, particularly in their intelligence and compassion. When looking into the character themselves, Charles saw a lot of his iconic bowl-cut haircut and green glasses, but chose to modernize him where they could make him nerdy and balding. For Peter's relationship with MJ, the writers wanted to demonstrate that she had her own skills and that allowed her to be her own type of hero, which required him to learn to not be overprotective. She was Afroman's favourite character to write for her, with a new job allowing her to be more of an active part of the Spider-Man. For Miles, he was added to be a younger character that audiences could identify with when they decided they were going to follow an older version of Peter Parker. They decided to add May's death at the end of the game to add growth to Peter's character as well. Initially, Marvel were against this choice, but their opinion would change as the game more developed. Earlier on in the story, May gives Peter the advice that he is only human. Bioware said that this message she gives to him is not to take too much of himself and to learn that he can rely on other people. By the game's final act, he does decide to rely both on MJ and Miles, but by that point it's too late to save everyone, and he is given the impossible choice at the very end of the story. This is an heroic sacrifice, and shows that this character really cares about even deep down. The death is also an echo to Uncle Ben's death, since that was a result of Peter making a selfish decision, while with May here, they are making a selfless decision. Here he feels mixed guilt and makes it such a bittersweet ending. For Mr. Negative, Bioware said that he is the hero of his own story. Connecting his alter ego Lee to May and Peter was also overall to add to the stress of Peter's life. For a different type of villain, JJ's podcast dialogue was written by Gage, who said that he related to the grouchiness of the middle-aged man. He also added that yes, most of the podcast was the character always blaming Spider-Man for the game's events, but also added the residents of New York's opinions for the players too. He was the one to also write Sable into the plot because he felt that having a force to increase the stakes at the city being dire was very much needed. Social media posts, which you can see in the game's menu too, were written by many members of both Insomniac and even Sony. When it came to swinging in the game, the team wanted to create a fun experience for the player without making the physics too realistic. They overall combined camera movements, character animations, and field to view to make the movement feel more heroic. For the costume, the team wanted to modernise it, but they also wanted to pay homage to the original design by Steve Ditko. Overall, it includes the large white spider symbol which stretches across the torso, adding gauntlet-like gloves and having a sneaker-type design instead of having knee-high boots. Chu said that the overall goal was to create a 23-year-old superhero type of wear in a 2018 New York City. Adding white to the colour scheme, they wanted very much each one to represent a different material. Blue represents where the most flexible is, such as the limbs. The red areas are flexible but are thicker for protection from minor scuffs and scrapes. And then the white is a carbon type of fibre which offers the most protection to the chest, hands and feet. They also heavily changed MJ's look here too, since well her lifestyle has heavily changed and upgraded as well, where she now wears more smart, sensible but also stylish outfits, which is from the past of her being a model, like other versions of her. For Mr. Negative, he was originally described to be a young rebel, wearing a leather jacket and sunglasses. However, as the story progressed, they chose for him to wear a black and white suit instead. For the Wrath Escape, the original idea was to have such a bigger type of mission, having two separate battles with Vulture and Electro, but according to Interha, this form of the game was not working and they had to cut things, which was difficult because it was very different from their original vision. It would then be an unknown member of the team who had the idea of merging the two fights and assembling a demo which would show it being a type of aerial battle, which is now in the final game. The game's score was composed by John Piasano, who worked on it for over 2 years, beginning during the writing phase. The aim was to make it feel like its own character and was to create a cinematic ambience, rather than having it being simple background music. The character theme took 2 months to make. The composer was influenced by music from other Spider-Man projects, but was majorly focused on the age of the character in this game, where he would add more gravitas to it. He also made it more of the perspective of Peter Parker rather than Spider-Man to emphasize the humanity of the character. He would even make the central theme tie in with villain scores, which is a technique he compared to John Williams' work on Star Wars to remind the audience that everything is part of Peter's story. Second advert titled Be Greater, which shows Spider-Man fighting variant enemies, first ran during the 2018 NFL kickoff game, which had around 19.5 million viewers. PlayStation marketing head Eric Lempel has said that this was the most expensive advert they had ran. An issue of Gameinformer would then be released with a cover having a piece of art from Alex Ross, promoting the game. A subway train in New York would then be fully converted to, with having it have Spider-Man themed chairs and posters. A proposal was then requested to be in the game, however the relationship ended up falling apart before the game's actual release. She would then offer to remove the sign they put in the game for it, but the fan chose to keep it in, hoping some other people could use it for proposals in the future. Titan Books would publish 2 tie-in books for the game. The first was Marvel Spider-Man Hostile Takeover, which was released on August 21st, 2018. This was written by David Liss and was about the hero's conflict with Kingpin as the villain attempts to blackmail Norman Osborn into making him the city financer. The book even shows the breakup between Peter and MJ at the end. It also introduces this universe's version of Echo and Bullet Spider 2 as they join forces with Spider-Man and Kingpin respectively. The second book would then be titled Marvel Spider-Man The Art of the Game, which was written by Paul Davies and contains the game's concept art, blueprints and designs. I actually own this one too. This version of the hero then actually appear in the 2018 comic book storyline titled Spider-Geddon, which was also written by Gage and is a sequel to the 2014 Spider-Verse story. Issue number 0 would then be released on September 26, 2018, where it shows the superior Spider-Man as he travels to the game's universe to recruit him. The story overall takes place after the events of the game and also introduces another one of their versions of the characters, which is Tarantula. Insomniac Artists would also provide different variant covers for the issues too. The game's universe would actually get its own comic miniseries titled Marvel Spider-Man City of War, which shows the events of the game while showing us some additional smaller storylines. It was written by Dennis Hopeless and was illustrated by Michelle Bandy. Additional variant covers were by Clayton Crane, David Nikamia, Gerardo Sandvaya, and Adi Granvo. A second miniseries titled Marvel Spider-Man Velocity would then be released in August 2019, being again written by Hopeless and this time being illustrated by Emilio Lasso. The story this time takes place after the game, where it shows the hero having an encounter with Swarm along with MJ, working with reporter Ben Ulrich. A third one titled Marvel Spider-Man The Black Cat Strikes was released in January 2020, once again being written by Hopeless and this time being illustrated by Luca Marcia. This one is an adaptation of the events during the DLC titled The City That Never Sleeps, but also further elaborating on Spider-Man's relationship with Black Cat. In 2019, both Diamond Select Toys and Sideshow Collectibles would release a 10-inch statue of the hero, and a 1/6 scale statue based on the Spider-Punk costume, which included a guitar and spider drone. Various Funko Pops would be released based on different characters in the game as well. I personally have the Unmasked Spider-Man, but it's currently at my university at Com. The advanced suit would then make various cameos in the film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and the character would then make a cameo himself in the film's sequel Across the Spider-Verse, where he's a member of Spider-Man 2099 Spider Society, and he's also voiced by Yuri himself. The as mentioned DLC was titled The City That Never Sleeps. Overall there was 3 episodes which included new story missions, challenges hosted by Screwball, new enemy types, and new trophies. The first episode was titled The Heist, being released on October 23rd, 2018, It is set several months after the main storyline and follows the return of Spider-Man's ex-girlfriend, Black Cat, as she goes for yet another heist, which draws him to a conflict between crime families. It released 3 of the costumes, which are Spider-Man UK, Scarlet Spider 2, and the Resilient suit, which was designed by Gabriel Delator. Episode 2 was titled Turf Wars and was released on November 20th of 2018. It follows the hero and Yuri's efforts on stopping Hammerhead taking over the crime families. This released 3 other costumes, which were Mangaverse Spider-Man, the Iron Spider, and the Spider Armor MK1. The final episode, titled Silver Lining, was released on December 21st, 2018. The plot follows Sable returning to New York to reclaim her technology that was stolen by the Mafia. She then teams up with Spider-Man to confront Hammerhead, who has now used her technology to make himself practically indestructible. This released the costumes Into the Spider-Verse, Cyborg Spider-Man, and Aaron Akem's armor. Another costume was released separately in the same month, being the suit from the Raimi trilogy being titled the Web Suit. 2 suits would then be released in the month of January 2019, being the Fantastic Four suits, which are the Future Foundation and the Bombastic Bagman suit. 2 other suits would then be released that July, being the upgraded and stealth suit from Spider-Man Far From Home. 3 suits would then be released on November 22nd, 2020, being the Amazing suit, the Arachnid suit, and the Armored Advanced suit. Finally, in December 2021, there was 2 other suits based in Spider-Man No Way Home, being the Hybrid suit along with their black and gold suit. The game first released worldwide on September 7, 2018, exclusively on PlayStation 4. Customers who pre-ordered were given instant access to some features, including the Spider-Punk, Iron Spider, and Velocity suits, skill points to unlock some abilities, a PlayStation theme featuring artwork from Prunov, and a user avatar for their account as well. Special versions of the game were also available, which were the Digital Deluxe, which included access to DLC and even a Spider-Man pin for all US and Canadian customers. There was a Collector's Edition, which again included the DLC, a custom steelbook case, an art book containing concept art, a white spider sticker, and a Spider-Man statue created by Gentle Giant. Sony even released a limited edition red PlayStation 4 Pro with a Spider-Man emblem on it, which included a copy of the game as well. A Game of the Year edition was also released on August 28, 2019, which, like many, included DLC. The second major version of the game would be Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered, which was a new port which included all content from the game, new trophies, and new additions to the photo mode. Players could also transfer their save files from the PlayStation 4 version too, allowing them to carry on playing where they previously left on the remaster. It features more updated textures, graphical and performance improvements from their next game, Marvel Spider-Man's Miles Morales, supports the console's 3D audio capabilities, faster loading screens, and the support from the DualSense controller. The major change to fans would be the change of the facial model of Peter Parker, from previously being John Bumlack to now being Ben Jordan, who was a better facial match to Yuri's facial capture. A remaster would be released on PlayStation 5 in selected territories on November 12th, with then being released worldwide a week later on November 19th. Originally, it was only available through the Ultimate Edition of Miles Morales' game, or as a small price through the Standard Edition. A port of the remaster would then be released for PC, developed in collaboration between PlayStation and Nexus Software. It had a standalone release, this time though in Steam and Epic Games on August 12, 2022. It will then become standalone on the PlayStation Store on May 4th, 2023. Overall, the game had either fairly or extremely great reviews, with the following ratings from different companies: an 87 out of 100 from Metacritic, a 9 out of 10 from Destructoid, a 9 out of 10 from Electronic Gaming Monthly, a 9.5 out of 10 from Gameinformer, a 4 out of 5 from Game Revolution, a 9 out of 10 from Gamespot, a 4.5 out of 5 from Games Radar Plus, a 8.7 out of 10 from IGN, and a 75 out of 100 from PC Gamer. The same sold 3.3 million units in its first 3 days of release, making it the fastest selling first time party release in Sony's history, beating God of War, making a 3.1 million. The game by May 2023 sold 33 million units. According to sale projections from the NPD Group in America, the game's first release month sales were 37% higher than the release sales of all 23 games released from 1995 to that point combined it. By November 2018, it became the fastest selling superhero game in the US. By July 2019, it became the best selling. Over here in the UK, the game became the fastest selling physical game of 2018, overtaking Far Cry 5, which even then was released on 3 other platforms and sold double the amount of units than God of War 2. It became the fastest selling Marvel branded game, beating LEGO Marvel Superheroes from 2013, and became the fastest selling individual format game since 2017's Call of Duty World War II. However, it wouldn't become the fastest selling superhero game under Batman Arkham Knight. It would be the top selling video game for 3 weeks, but was beaten by FIFA 19. It would then become the second behind the game, being the best selling game of September. It would then remain in the top 10 and selling video games until January 3rd, 2019, lasting 13 weeks. In Japan, it sold around 125,154 physical units in its first week, becoming the top selling games of any format, and was still in that position by its third week, selling 244,051 units. The game also became the best selling Western developed PlayStation 4 titles, only being surpassed by Call of Duty Black Ops 4 and Minecraft. It did though become the best selling Western Europe Sony funded title since Crash Bandicoot Warped from 1998. The game got nominated for a whopping 72 awards, with winning 11. Credit for its animation, dialogue, Peter being a great character, and overall it being a great game. Of course, the company would then make the as mentioned Miles Morales and Marvel Spider-Man 2, which are both being further discussed in the next 2 videos. But among the announcement of Spider-Man 2, the company also announced Marvel's Wolverine, which is also based on a Marvel Comics character and is in development for the PlayStation 5. It is rumoured to share the same continuity as the Spider-Man games, being co-directed by Brian Horton and Cameron Christian, who are the creative director and game director of the Miles Morales game. Of course, saddening information has happened recently involving this game and other future projects from the company, even Spider-related ones, but I'll further discuss this sometime in the future of the series. Insomniac was really the right company to be given such a project. The swing physics are just amazing and it overall has a lot of care put into it. Just the amount of ways to actually travel is amazing as well, from high jumping to running up walls or even web launching. I love how they overall open the game with its introduction to Peter and his aesthetic in his apartment, to then introducing us how to swing from the get-go. Combat can be really fast and hectic, particularly with enemies where from the get-go they have many of them, and some of them will not give you the chance to do anything before they attack, where if you fail to dodge, well, you lose health very easily. However, I think it's a good thing to do, where you will learn to how to dodge or zip around fights a lot faster as you also get more health as you level up in the game as well. Overall, this makes you more confident in your fighting as you go, before obviously the game will give you a new challenge with a new enemy type or boss. Also, the amount of suits, good god. You have the amazing amount of options from, well, whatever you want really. Comic suits, yeah. Movie suits, yeah. Even original suits, yeah. There was also a surprising amount of villains in the game too, where you could get a good bit of learning about all of them. More than others obviously, with their origins also being featured. The best thing is clearly the characterization of these classic characters, good or bad. Of course, you gotta give this to both the brilliant voice acting and the amazing script that was written. Overall, this game looks amazing, has amazing Spider-Man story, has a ton of variety, has amazing performances, and yes, does make you feel like Spider-Man. Well, at least a good bit it does. Bads really well are just some plot threads had to be waiting until the DLC, but I suppose now, looking at it, you can just play that straight away for free in some instances, depending on how you actually buy the main game. The stealth did feel a bit repetitive at times, but that's really what I have to complain about. I overall loved this game. I overall gave it a 4.5 out of 5 or a 9 out of 10. So that was me overall having a look into the first Spider-Man game from Insomniac. And God, this is a game I have replayed a lot of times. I think I played the game once on PlayStation 5, once I got a copy of Miles Morales on the PlayStation 5 when I got it as well. And yeah, it was really fun, and that last gameplay through was, I think, last Christmas before I've got to play the new game around about this Christmas season as well. And yeah, it's just fun even then looking back at it all, because it's very nostalgic to me, because I think this is one of the last Spider-Man projects I truly wasn't hyped for, but was that hyped for to look into every detail. Of course I do with the movies, but even then, I think with the future of the movies as well, I see news articles, don't get me wrong, but I don't really look that far into it. I'm kind of more just in the stance of even being a massive Spider-Man film fan, and kind of being, yeah, I'm just going to wait for the news to be official, or be excited whenever things start getting filmed, or even then, when things are filmed, let's just wait for the trailer, I guess. Anyways, again, this is a fantastic game, and I can't wait to look into the future 2 as well. I say future, but the future 2 videos looking into the next 2 games as well. So yeah, I hope you had a fun time looking into this deep dive, and yeah, I'll see you next time for Spider-Man's Miles Morales.